Alright, let's talk about a concept that I call scrap in contention. It's something that all players are instinctively aware of to some extent, but having a clear understanding of it and its implications will massively help you in strat, both as a beginner or intermediate player, or as an advanced player. Beginners and intermediates will benefit from this by knowing how to execute good openers that provide a strong enough economy to be competitive in the game, and to prevent more experienced players from bullying them or abusing the fact that they have more knowledge about a particular map. It will allow them to prevent the opponent from controlling them. Meanwhile, advanced players will gain a better understanding of how to create an advantage situation for themselves in terms of the economy, and how to control their opponent by disrupting their game plan. Now, contention means in play, or that both players could take the scrap. So not all scrap is equal. Some is of higher priority and some is lower priority, based on how easy or hard it is to reach for each player. It's important to know this not only so you get enough resources, but so you do damage to the opponent's economy by denying them of potential resources. It'll allow you to gain awareness of low priority scrap that you can save for a retreat or a rebuild. It also makes you aware of high priority scrap that you can take quickly. This is scrap that could have gone to your opponent. You can disrupt your opponent's game plan if you take the scrap that they were expecting to have, which is their safe scrap, that I'll get into soon. And this can cause people to crumble if they don't have the normal amount of resources that they would typically have for that map for their strategies and tactics. This can allow you to control the game, including your opponent, rather than you being controlled by the opponent. There's three types of scrap. There's guaranteed, safe, and in contention. Obviously at the start you need to get some scrap at your spawn, the guaranteed scrap, to have enough to build and to progress. But ideally you want to prioritize the scrap that's in contention, the high priority scrap, so that you can deny it from the opponent. Generally, the closer to mid some scrap is, the more likely it is to be in contention and therefore less safe or not guaranteed. So I went through the map list, the one that we currently have as of the day of uploading this, and I grouped the maps into types or in ways that they're played in terms of the scrap positioning and how you need to open and take scrap. Now the first type is wide or specific opener for safe. Now what this basically means is that in order to play this map in such a way where you have enough resources to be strong and to be what you could call competitively viable, so you've got a chance basically to survive, you need to take a very specific set of steps. You need to, in the opener, every second needs to be counted carefully. You need to be going here and there and then to the next place. And if you don't manage to get all of this within the time frame, you're going to have serious trouble in the mid game, in the late stages, because you're not going to have enough to afford what your opponent is going to be able to afford because they have taken their steps correctly. The second type, which I've split into two subgroups, the general title is Majority in Contention. So as it sounds, most of the scrap on this map is scrap that is not really, it's not guaranteed for you. It may be biased towards you, it might be closer to you, but there's a real chance that depending on how the player opens, your opponent opens, it can completely change how you open. So if you go to a corner and your opponent has also gone to this corner, you obviously need to switch to another corner, and that can really disrupt what you're doing. So the first subgroup is corners or sides. Maps where you've got to choose which way you're going to go, and that's going to change depending on how the opponent has also opened. The second subgroup is the 3-player maps, where you have a vacant spawn with typically just as much scrap as your spawn or your opponent's spawn. So that would usually be 33%, or a third of the map scrap is going to be up for grabs, alongside anything else that's lying around. The third type is what I call the mid-opener changes everything. It is maps where you can run straight to mid from spawn, don't deploy in spawn, you go straight to mid, And if you do that, scrap that would have been equally accessible from both players or in contention, kind of neutral, it's going to be way easier for the mid player to take, and they are going to be able to get a massive scrap advantage in the game, assuming that the opponent does not challenge it or does not think of a way to counter it. With regards to mid opener changes everything, this category, there are some things to actually consider here. Why not just go mid every time? Well, if you go to mid, it's extremely dangerous. The player that does not go to mid could deploy quickly, get scouts and rush, and likely arrive either at the same time as or just after the time that the mid player has deployed. So there's a real strong potential to rush counter against someone that you believe is about to go straight to mid. Secondly, again, an extension of this, if you do not go mid, you can open in a safe way. You may end up having less scrap than the opponent, but you can guarantee your chances of getting into the mid game without dying to a rush or not getting enough resources. This allows you to reduce the chances of a game ending because of luck. So because of this, on these particular mid-heavy maps, you need to be able to play well under a scrap deficit or having a disadvantage in terms of the economy against your opponent. And lastly, of course, if you go to mid and your opponent also decides to go to mid, you're going to arrive there and end up having to fight across recyclers, which is obviously going to determine the game in a matter of minutes, and it puts the game into a real coin toss in terms of who wins. So if you do not want to put yourself in that situation where you're going to have to fight really carefully and aim perfectly in order to get through the first 2 minutes, it's better off for you if you simply let the other player get mid, let them take it, play safe, open in a safe manner, get enough scrap to play, and then secure and guarantee your chances of getting into the mid game, where you can use a wide range of tools and you can use the more strategic sides of the game to win rather than aim. The fourth category is maps where there's less than 25% of the scrap that's actually in contention. So all of the scrap, or almost all of it, is going to be very easy for you to get. You're going to get your half, unless the opponent does a very strange and unusual opener that takes a huge risk. Now, we don't have many maps like this. I can only really think of two that are definitely in this category. There are a couple others that come close to it, but generally, for the map list that we have, a lot of the scrap is up for grabs. It's anyone's scrap, really. There's a bias towards one or the other, but it's all in play. But this group that we have here are the maps where you can open and you will get a lot of scrap without much risk. The last group that I have is what I call the special cases. Now, these are the maps that could belong to the other groups, but there's something about them in terms of the size and the layout and the shape and the placement of the objects or the scrap and spawns, where you need to play it, you need to learn this map in a particular way. It stands alone in terms of how it's played. Alright then, let's jump into some maps, some examples. So the first category, wide or specific opener for safe. Let's take a look at Scavenger Madness. Now for the colours, this green here, this darker green, is guaranteed scrap for you. This is scrap where it's effectively impossible for the opponent to take this because it's just too far away from them, it's too inconvenient, and it's scrap that you can use to begin the game with. So you obviously, as a north spawn, you go to your first corner. You can then get this scrap and this scrap on the way from back to mid. Now for this scrap, you need to make sure that it does come up on radar. It can be missed by radar, so if you, as you're waiting for the recycler to deploy, you can come around here and pick it up on radar. Then you move into mid and these two will be taken. Now, as we said earlier, the guaranteed scrap is low priority. So as you arrive to mid, it's a good idea to come for this before these back two. Bring the scavengers forward and go for this, and then maybe make a play for the yellow piles in mid. These are the ones that are in contention. Yellow means in contention, so neutral. This kind of lime, sort of light shade of green, is scrap that's safe for you, but not guaranteed for you. Because if the opponent comes to mid, and you are a little bit late, they can bring their scavengers forward, they can skip their likely scrap, their safe scrap, they can skip the in contention 50-50 scrap, and they can come straight for your safe scrap and take this off of you. This is 10 that they can steal from you. So it's not guaranteed because of this potential move, because of how close players now will be, but it is on your side, and it's very close to where you'll be deployed, so it should be yours. It is safe to be yours. Then you have your second corner. Again, I marked it as safe but not guaranteed, because if you arrive in mid and your opponent is aggressively pressuring or threatening the base, you may not be able to leave to get your silo. Because if you run away and the player pushes in, there's a good chance that they can take your recycler. So obviously there can be games, there have been games, where you're simply not able to take your second corner because your opponent is just pressuring too much. If this happens, generally it means that they've also not taken their second corner either, so you're actually playing on an equal footing. But if they have come up with a way to take their corner, perhaps through commissat or simply opening in a really quick way, taking their corner and attacking you and before you've got yours, it can be a serious problem, because they're going to have all of this scrap here to help with the push. So all of this, while you'll be only playing on about half of your scrap. This is why it's so important to get the second corner on Canyon Madness. Now, of course, red means guaranteed for the opponent, orange is safe for the opponent, yellow is 50-50 in play, in contention. Anyone can go for this. On to our second example, Big Venus map. A more simple map to understand. You have your north spawn and your south spawn. Everything in the spawn is guaranteed to be yours. So you take that. You get it first so that you have something to build with. Of course, it is guaranteed, so it's technically low priority, but on this map you do need to get this straight away. You need to get your 3 safe scrap fields, just as south needs to get their 3. South ones are bunched up a bit more, but it doesn't really make a difference. You need to be getting all 3 of these, so if you're south spawn you must get this, this and this, because if not, the north player can come around here and move southeast. This is a move I like to make a lot. I come here and I challenge for this, I try to take it off of them. If I can take this off of you, I'm going to have a massive advantage in the resource game, and it will likely translate into a win just from taking this. The south player also can very quickly get their 3 and then make a play for northwest. And if the north spawn player has not got their 3 quick enough with a good opener that gets silos across here, or moves the recycler to one of these corners and then silos across, they can take this as a scrap steal and have an advantage in the economy game. So for Big Venus map, you need to get your 3. Once you have your 3 with your guaranteed, your safes, then you can decide, do you want to play defensively? Do you want to go for an attack run aside? Do you want to try to win through houses across the mid area? And the game is then open into the mid-game stage. And Grand Theft. Now Grand Theft is a bit more complicated. You've got your guaranteed, which you usually will get straight away because you need it. It's a low scrap map. You then have your safe, just these 2 in south mid for south player, and this one in the southwest, or in the new channel that we added, the new path. When you come for this, you need to make sure this comes up on radar, otherwise scavengers will not notice it and they will ignore it and they'll come back round to mid. These are marked as safe but not guaranteed because you can open, it's as that say I'm the north player, and I really quickly get to mid very early by like 1 minute 30. I could make a play to take the south scrap. So it's not guaranteed for south player if the north player opens in a specific way. And this here, east mid, is the only scrap that's truly 50-50 for both players. Now for group 2, the maps where the majority of scrap is in contention, and you need to be considering the corners or sides that you want to take. Let's go with compass as the first example. So, for this map, you have 3 pieces of scrap, 3 piles of scrap that are guaranteed. Just 3. The rest of it, so not including these 2, the rest of it is all in play, effectively. I mean, these ones here, on your closer to you, are more biased towards you, but it's not guaranteed. Because if you come out and go west, and then you would naturally try to go east, the opponent could open, go east, and then decide to move south. It's something that is done fairly often, and if that happens and you don't get there quick enough, you're going to lose this, and you're going to have to think about your next step, which may be to backtrack and go for the scrap here on the west side, or see if they've left their other corner open. Neutral scrap would be these halfway across mid ones and the east-west side. Mid is obviously in contention but slightly safer for the equivalent side, but again, not guaranteed. Very little scrap on this map is guaranteed. If you open and have bad luck and the opponent has good luck, it's a very punishing map because of this fact that there's very little scrap that's safe. This is the reason why this map is so punishing and hard to play, because of this specific reason. So use this information to understand where you should be going and what to do if you lose a corner. If I come west, my opponent is here. They've stolen from me, so I should try to steal back and return the game to 50-50. The 2 back pieces of scrap are very low priority because they're just out of the way, they're inconvenient. You only really have them in play if you've got the rest. So you want to get all of this first. You want to try and play for the mid first because it's all in contention or slightly biased to one or the other. Then you have your east and west that's also in contention, and then you have your spawn scrap that you can get as the low priority. After everything in mid has been taken, you should then look to take your north and south. That's a standard way of doing it. You could get this early, but I wouldn't really suggest it because you want to play for this. If you are kind of slow about taking mid and you're playing really safe, let's say I go west, I go up from here, I find my opponent here and I'm scared and I run away. They're going to get this. They can come into mid and get all 4 pieces if I don't contest. I can run here and get this, but I'm just going to get west and east. This map can really make you suffer from being stuck on such low scrap. Okay, so Paranoia. This is similar to Compass, except the in contention scrap, not this one, across the southwest, mid and northeast. It is all completely neutral, 50-50, because of just how far away it is from the spawns. On Compass, the scrap kind of favors one side or the other, but it's not guaranteed. On Paranoia, it's completely neutral as to who gets it. You spawn in, you choose a corner, and you go. I would recommend that you deploy, get a silo, take your guaranteed, so you've got something in the bank, and then make your way over to a corner. Another way to do it is to spawn and immediately go to a corner to take in contention, then either move to mid and get more in contention, or move back to spawn and get your guaranteed. Third map to consider for this majority in contention is Blast Chamber. If you take a look at this, you can see that I've actually not marked any of the scrap as guaranteed. Nothing is really guaranteed, because if you spawn here and you go here straight away to north, yes, it will be guaranteed for you. But if you go south and take this, and the opponent comes around here, they could take it off of you. So it really depends on how you open. Everything here is up for grabs, depending on what you do. Because you could spawn and go to the east side as your first move, or you could spawn and go here as your first move. Only in actual mid is it in contention 50-50. The rest of it is kind of biased towards one or the other. But these four here are completely neutral. These favour the south spawn, and these favour the north spawn. Last example is Citadels. Another kind of punishing map to play. You've got your safe, then you have your close pockets, your close small pockets that are safe. Well, this is guaranteed, this is safe. Then you have your mid area, so your large pockets for mid and your true mid. These are 50-50 in contention. This is a map that you should kind of experiment with. There's lots of different ways to open. It's very high risk. Sometimes what I like to do is I will immediately spawn, construct a round to grab one of the 50-50 piles, the in contention pile, while I have scavengers working the guaranteed, just back to recycler, no silo. This is really dangerous because if I go here as my opening move, and my opponent also comes here as the opening move, we're going to end up fighting here, and one of us is going to be massively set back because we're going to lose our constructor. The winning player in this fight can then move to mid, or they could move all the way around to the other big field. These two fields are much larger in scrap than the back two. The back two have about, I think, half as much as the middle ones. Middles has a lot of scrap. So for this map you need to, well, you don't need to, but you really want to try to get at least one of the three mid options, and then your two back ones as well. You can win on just your two safe and your guaranteed, but it's very difficult. It's near impossible if your opponent gets their safe and all three in contention. So that's how you play this map. You choose which one of the three mids, you secure it, and then you get your safe. Alright then, so the 3-player maps with majority in contention, or at least a third of it. Let's start with ice, it's the most simple. Now, very straightforward. If you spawn here, your opponent will be here, or I think sometimes here. You have to determine it. And then from that information, when you find where your opponent has spawned, you know that the other corner is up for grabs. So let's assume I'm here, my opponent's here. I would need to, at some point early in the game, come out and work out where my opponent has spawned. Then it's a good idea to try and make a play to fight for this. You don't need to. It is possible to win on this map without going for the vacant, not even getting any of it. But you need to at least maybe try to disrupt the opponent, because if they go straight here, you wait a second, get a half an army and come over here, you can punish them for that. If they go a bit later with an army, you could punish it by hitting the base while they're out doing this. And if they are here setting up, you could come over and fight and maybe win the fight and take it off of them. So ice is a pretty interesting, it's quite a fun map. I quite like it in this dynamic. There's a lot of options. It's not simply, oh, whoever gets this wins. It's actually not, it's not that simple. You can play around it. You can find ways to abuse a player who is desperate and determined to get the vacant, because it's 33%, one third, one third, one third. It's a big amount of scrap to take, but there are definitely ways to punish it or to take advantage of someone trying to take this. Okay, Battle by the Sea. It's very similar to Ice in the layout, in how you play it, and in where everything is. However, you do have 20, I believe it's 20 scrap on the upper areas. So yes, same concept applies to this map as to Ice, except you've also got this here you need to get. One option is to spawn, drop a silo, and then run straight to the vacant. Again, you're going to have to determine which pocket is vacant. I don't think it's always this way. I think it can change. So you've got to get that information before you make a move. Or I know some players will make the move regardless with the recycler, then spot the player, and then go to whatever pocket is open straight away. You can win from spawn, then the two upper areas, but it's dangerous, because let's say I go here and I get this, my opponent could move here and take this, and now I've got to make a decision. What do I do? Because I've come back round here, this is gone. My opponent could already be going for this or this. So this map is very interesting to play against, but you can certainly, in terms of how they are opening and what they're doing, you can take advantage of what they do, or you can severely end up at a big disadvantage by not taking initiative quickly and remembering where the scrap is and what you need to do. So this map is going to need a lot of practice. It is quite a high skill demand map because of the need to make a decision. You need to think quickly, you need to have a plan, you need to have a backup plan as well. Okay, Rock Baby is very similar as well, with your vacant that you want to try to get. You've also got mid with scrap, unlike the other two. You've got some deposits sort of in between the spawns, and you've got this outer area that is almost never involved in the game, but it is there. If you have trouble and you need to rebuild or retreat, you could run up here, get here, maybe run for this as well, and get a rebuild going. So obviously guaranteed in the spawn. For the southeast player, this is pretty safe. I mark this as 50-50 because it's equally distant between the spawns. This favors the north spawn because it's so far away for you to get, but it's not guaranteed if they decide to go mid or east first. Okay, let's move on to the fourth group, where the mid opener changes everything. These maps are very hard to play when you are learning to, when you're trying to improve, when you're trying to play against strong opposition. These are the maps, Hills of War, Decimation Valley, maps like this. These are the maps where high tier, high skill players are going to have a big advantage over you because they know how to manipulate the scrap placement and to get more than you. So, North spawn for Hills of War. Yes. Yeah, this is the right one. Hills of War. So, across mid is 50-50. Both players are equally as far away. And middle of canyons is 50-50 neutral. You have your west and east in relation to your spawn, which is safe but not guaranteed. This is the scrap that you need. So if you're playing quote unquote normal and not going for mid, you need to get west, east canyon, and then you are in a good position to win. So south spawn, get your west, get your east. That's all you really need. Then you're in a good spot. Then you have mid to fight over. You don't need it if you get this, but it certainly gives you a massive advantage if you can. But let's consider what happens when someone does go straight for mid. Okay, so here I've drawn it, so south player has rushed mid at the start. They've gone straight there. All of mid is now guaranteed for them, and everything below mid is safe for them. So this is a big change. Now for them, in contention, 50-50 is the northwest corner, which was originally safe for the north player. It's not safe anymore for them. It's now up for grabs. Even the close scrap here is up for grabs. So this is the impact that it makes when you rush mid. You get all of this, and you can play for this, which leaves your opponent with just these three deposits that are either guaranteed or very safe. Even this could be denied. If you make an aggressive push from your mid deploy, and you can take a position like this, you can shut the north player out of getting into canyons, and they're just playing on these two. At that point in time, they've lost. It's effectively impossible to defend with just this two scrap, unless there's some kind of serious huge discrepancy in the tiers. Like if a lower tier player rushes mid and a high tier player is playing just with these two, it's possible, but it's going to be a huge challenge for them to overcome. And now, just obviously bear in mind, map by map, it does vary. I did try to create a system that's standardized, but this is in contention, but it's not high priority because it's really awkward to get to. You would save this for late game. This would be low priority, ideally as a retreat option. So if you get battered and you're in here in south and you need scrap, you could run into canyon as a last resort, like a last stand, and take that scrap. I think there's about 20 there. Okay, let's go to moon. This is a nice simple one. Okay, normal moon, open up. South, your only safe is at the bottom of the hill. Sorry, I mean your only guaranteed is bottom of the hill. Then just above it is safe. Same for north player, bottom of the hill is guaranteed, then there's safe on mid. Then you've got the opposite corners, which are 50-50. Whoever wants to go for that can take it. But that is not normally how the map is played, right? Because normally someone is going to take advantage of the strong mid position with the high ground. What happens here is that not only this bottom of hill is guaranteed, but also this side of mid is guaranteed, and they can fight over this. So what west of mid was originally safe for south, it's no longer safe. It's now in contention. Anyone can take it, which forces the south player to play with just this piece here. They can try to go east, they can try to fight for this, but the north player could challenge for this or west and block them out of ever trying to get to northwest, and it is extremely hard for the player who does not get mid to win the game. This is kind of why moon is such a bad map, because it's literally go to mid and win, or don't go mid and lose. Obviously there are cases where things happen and it doesn't quite go like that, but that is on paper what will happen if someone goes mid. It's a very low scrap map. So on a low scrap map, to change a safe to a 50-50, it means a lot. It's a huge impact on the game to go mid. It heavily favors mid. And the third example I have for this concept of the mid opener is Decimation Valley. This is the standard format for it. So in your spawn, you've got two fields near you that are guaranteed. Then you've got just above and to the west, or to the east and south, as your safe. And then you've got mid, which is up for grabs, 50-50. Anyone can take this. So that's pretty nicely balanced. But what if the north player goes here quickly, sets up on the hill, rushes a constructor into mid and gets a silo. I like to do this sometimes. While this becomes safe for them, not guaranteed because South player could come and fight them early, but it's pretty likely that they'll take it, North spawn, when deploying here straight away. And look how it changes. So this was just safe for North, but now it is guaranteed for North just because of the positioning. If you're positioned here and your opponent is playing around here, it's so close to you, it's so far from them that it's just not going to be viable for them to take this. Additionally, playing in mid makes these two a bit easier for you to reach when you're North. Playing in mid, you can get to these in a kind of easier way, whereas originally these were safe for South. Now with a mid rush, they are in contention and neutral. Okay, the fifth group, where most of the scrap is guaranteed or safe. I said less than 20 or less than 25% is in contention. I could only really find two real examples of this. Other maps do kind of lean towards this, but there's only two what I call true examples of this. First one is nitrogen. I mean, this should feel kind of intuitive, I suppose. If playing this map, it kind of feels like everything is really safe. If you spawn east and the west, southwest, you can get everything on your side without taking any risks. You could open and cross, but that's a very kind of niche case. It's not what you're going to see in 90% of games. Obviously, if someone does do this, you're going to have to adapt what to do based on your understanding of how this is all placed. It's going to kind of disrupt everything. But let's keep it standard opener. You've got right next to spawn. It's guaranteed. It's very unlikely someone's taking this unless you leave it. So you want to get this. You get yourself up deep into your side. You can take all of this. And then when it gets to mid, obviously closer to your side is safe for you. And the only real 50-50 scrap is right in the center of the three mid lanes. So almost all of it on one side is guaranteed or safe. And same for here. And then only right in the center is it actually not biased towards any player. Now we have Moon War. I think this is a little bit more scrapping contention than the previous one, the nitrogen, but it still applies. You have your guaranteed, so spawn, close crater, and just across on the other side. You should be getting this every time straight away, or leaving this until later as a scrap for recovering, because obviously in mid it's much higher priority because it's in play. So you want to get out there, try and fight for mid, maybe go for the top crater or the south crater and get this. It's a good idea to leave this scrap and this for later and try to get this first. So I mean, you can be in a good position just with spawn, crater and side. That can be enough. You'd ideally want to get at least this. If you don't want to make a play for mid, you don't want to fight for mid, you can give it up and you can play with just your side and you should be okay. That's why I mark this map as in this special group of most of the scrap being safe. It's only this here that is neutral. These two are very safe for the equivalent player. It's unlikely that you're going to lose this unless you also completely lose mid, at which point you've probably lost the game because you fought and lost scrap here. And finally, we have what I call the special case group, maps that are unique and need to be understood as their own thing in and of themselves. You've got to learn these maps. If you want to play on any of these three, you need to know about this information. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time. Corner pocket. Really unique map for scrap. You've got, I believe it's 80 in these wings. You've got 80 here, 80 here, and then 20 in your spawn, or near your spawn. I believe that's how it is. So you've got this guaranteed 20. That's obviously nowhere near enough. That's nowhere near enough scrap to win or to defend or do anything really. So you need to get at least one of these. Normally, how this game is played is that someone goes left and they get all of this, and then you also go left and you get all of this. That's one way it can go. Another way it can go is you both go the same way and you end up fighting over this, and because this is just a bit too far away, it doesn't get touched and the game is decided on who wins this fight, because it's just an absolute ball ache to have to run back here. You're going to get caught out trying to run away. So you have to decide. There's the John Blonde opener, which is where you will quickly rush a silo to one side and then play on the other side, in the hopes that, well, this is the reason why it makes sense, because one, if you silo here and you play on the east side and your opponent is also on the east side, then you just fight as normal across one field while you get this for free. So potential way it goes, number one, is really strong for you if you do the John Blonde. The second way it goes is you silo west, you go for east to play recycler here, but the opponent has gone west and they come down and they destroy your silo. Well, you're going to get 50-50. So best case scenario, you fight over one side and you get the other for free, and worst case scenario, it goes into a 50-50. So this is a very good opener. It's effective, it's quite well known, but I do have my own way of doing it that I came up with. I'm surprised no one kind of realized this, but if you take the factory and you push it against the wall in the spawn pocket, the radar will pick up to here and you can see which way the player's going. So if my opponent is doing a John Blonde and they run east to get the early silo, I will see it, and then I know to quickly move the other side, take my constructor with me to the side that they've gone to John Blonde on, and I can knock out the silo and I can drop my own silo with scavengers following. I normally do the two that are in spawn. I bring them once they've finished. I wait for them to finish gathering spawn. In the meantime, I'm building a half army with that scrap. I take the constructor with two scavs around. I knock out the silo. I put my own down. I take that, and I'm here fighting across here. So the John Blonde player, or the one opening in that way, is fighting me as the contingency, like the worst case scenario, the 50-50 fight, but I'm getting what they hoped to take. And this will work every time because I can see where they're going because of factory radar. So I thought I'd give that to the community, give it a try, maybe even build upon it and get a level 3 on this kind of opening evolution. But that's my stage 2 to it. That's my response to the John Blonde. How about you just use the factory radar? Rather than this map being a guess game, a 50-50 coin toss, you make it a 100% guarantee you know where they're going and you can manipulate it. So that's corner pocket. That's how I play corner pocket, and that's probably why I never lose. Corner pocket. Alright, next one. Let's do Theatre of Pain. Okay. This map is really horrible. Where to begin? Well, all the scrap is like on the way to mid. But because there's so much in mid, you need to get in deep and fight straight away in mid. So anything that's kind of on the periphery of mid is kind of guaranteed for you because you're fighting over these three. You're trying to contest with these three. So you're going to get this and they're going to get this. And then you're fighting over these, who can build the quickest, who can aim best, who can manipulate the terrain to their advantage. Things like this. Map is very low on scrap. It's very punishing. It's a very hard map to play. It's a very bad map in design, honestly. But this is at least what I'd recommend for opening. So north spawn, immediately deploy here. In my opinion, if you spawn north, you've got the better deal, because this is nice and easy to get, and then you can just focus on pushing into south. If you spawn south, you've got some options. Well, I guess the standard way is to move here and deploy here, because you're right in the middle of three pockets, three fields. Now this looks good on, it looks good in terms of the top-down view on the map, but when you realize that these are like high walls that scavs do not navigate, this is a very steep wall that they can't climb down. And I think here as well, the wall is a bit awkward. Actually, no, it's not. It's fine. They can get here, but this is your safe. This is your guaranteed. To actually get the scrap here, your scavs are going to have to go out and then round. But your opponent's going to be here with a presence coming into here. So it's a really awkward map. It needs a lot of practice. Another way to open is to come over here, deploy here. This becomes your guaranteed. But then you're quite far away from this. Equally, if you open by going left and then deploying here, you're in the middle of two fields. This will be your guaranteed, probably even this. But then you can fight for this one here and this one here. But you're too far away from this, and the north player is going to get to this pile much easier than you if you are here, because you've got to cross through this, and the fighting on Theatre of Pain usually happens in this square here. Last one that we'll look at is Trinity. I don't know why that's there. Okay, this map is intended to be a 3-laner. Sort of plays out like a 3-laner, but not really, because you can just climb up and down, but AI at least does have to respect it. Let's say I'm spawning south. Again, well, the thing to say about this is it's a hybrid map. It's a hybrid 3-player with the vacant spawn issue, but it's also a map that has a heavy mid favourite, a big bias towards mid. So it kind of falls into the category of the 3-player, and the mid changes everything. It's both. It's a hybrid. It's not over if your opponent gets mid, but they can block you out of getting to vacant. So that's why you do need to get to mid quick and contest. But for the northeast spawn, you can still get to vacant even if mid is blocked. The south player has to do a bit more effort to close off northwest. So there is, you could say on this map, there is kind of some advantages and disadvantages on the spawn. So if you get northeast, you can get vacant easier. If you spawn south, you need to be more proactive about getting into mid and doing something. But either way, you still have 3 guaranteed, sorry, not this one, you have 3 guaranteed fields along with the spawn. And then you have mid to play for and vacant to play for. So there it is. That's how to play the economy game. Of course, there are other related principles such as net scrap gain and scavenger management. I do have guides on those also, which I'll link in the description. Let's summarize. All players need to think about this in order to open well enough to be competitive in a match. Otherwise, they will be at a scrap disadvantage and will be bullied by more experienced players on any given map. Advanced players need to know this in order to exert control in a match and ensure they do not leave resources for their opponent, or to develop an aspect of scrap denial into their game. You can apply this understanding to any map by looking at where scrap is, in terms of where spawn points are in relation to those, and by thinking about how easy or hard it is for each player to reach that scrap, and also how much there is in each pile. Good luck and have fun out there in the zone.